Finally! And there is the lineup. Oh, today is not my day, guys.
This is the Swedish beach.
Yeah.
Nice day for it. Probably
Beautiful. 6 degrees.
not great
Balmy 6 degrees. Nice.
for swimming.
That's nice. Look at the geese.
How does it feel to have a day off and not be in a workshop?
Feels like I am skiving off from my duties, to be honest.
We chose a good day to go for our first little explore around. So the bridge that you see over there, it's the bridge that goes all the way to Denmark. So we'll go to the point. So this is the view right now.
You can see some wind turbines and some factories.
So the reason we're here is the caravan park just behind us, and this morning we came here to do some washing, because one thing we didn't expect when we came to Sweden, Malmö especially, is there are no laundromats anywhere. So basically to get some washing done, that was the only place we could find. So we are currently waiting for the washing to finish, and yeah, we're kind of like exploring around in the meantime. It's a very nice foreshore, but yeah, it is really cold right now.
There's some Woodward 2 pillboxes all along here, so we'll go and have a look at one of those. There was one there I just explored. It looks like there's maybe 2 or 3 up this way. Old Woodward 2 machine gun nest. All covered up, but that would have been where the machine guns were. 4 of them, and that would have been the spotter at the top, I guess. And they're all along here, I guess, protecting the Swedish border from invasion from the Denmark side. You won't be able to see that, but that is an outdoor ocean swimming pool. They are keen. I should do that. I should do that. Alright. If I get 100 people to tell me that I've got to do that ocean swim in this freezing cold, I'll do it.
So overall, first impression of Sweden, I'm so far, despite the cold, enjoying being here. It's nice and refreshing, a change of scene. But there's been a few challenges since we've made a big move. First of all, the bureaucracy is actually quite a bit worse than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we knew France was going to be really bad.
But Sweden is actually quite hard too.
Yeah, it is.
Even being like an EU citizen, just to get SIM cards, buying a car, like all this kind of paperwork, it's actually a lot harder opening a bank account. So yeah, one thing we didn't expect, it's Australia is a lot easier for that for foreigners, I feel like, coming to the new country.
For sure.
Then supermarket shopping. That was very overwhelming the first time, because obviously we are used to buying our products at Woolworths in Australia, the grocery store, and going to supermarket here, everything is in Swedish, obviously.
Everything.
There's no English translation at all. So yeah, buying products, yeah, you have to get used to it. Luckily, we can use an app on our phone sometimes to translate, but when you don't have a SIM card, like I didn't have for a very long time, that made things a lot trickier. So yeah, a bit overwhelming in that respect.
No, it's good. I'm enjoying it as well. It's a refreshing change of scenery and change of culture. Not a ton of like historical architecture and stuff in Malmö that we've found so far. So Malmö Castle, which we haven't seen yet, which we're keen to. But other than that, it's mostly like kind of, I guess it's like 80s apartments and stuff. Parts of it, to be honest, are a bit grim.
A little bit abandoned buildings, a bit industrial looking.
But that could just be Malmö itself. So yeah, so we'll do some sightseeing for sure. It's just not really our main agenda at the moment. What else? Like,
oh, one of the highlights for me of the last 2 weeks is the specialty. One of the specialty as a Swede, I'm probably going to butcher the name. A kanelbulle, kanub, which is like a cinnamon roll. It is just so good. Like that's actually a specialty from Sweden. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to find the best one in Malmö. There's 2 more things I wanted to add. Surprisingly, most Swedish people speak very well English. So compared to France, in Sweden they don't do subtitles for movies or things like that, whereas in France we translate all the movies, everything. So I think that's why in France we're so bad in English. So yeah, that's a good thing. At least we can speak English to most Swedish people.
Yeah, and we've learnt tack is thank you,
Oh,
and
yes.
hey is hello.
That's our first two words. We need to learn some more.
Yeah, or tuck tuck.
And one more thing, when you order a cappuccino at a coffee shop, there is no chocolate powder on top.
Or
So
cinnamon.
essentially,
You make it
it's
yourself.
not a cappuccino, you do it yourself, which is not a big deal,
that.
but
I like
it's
being
just
able to do it because then you can put as much as you want on it. I think it's superior actually.
it's just a little thing that we found. So yeah, now looking forward to sharing more random facts with you about Sweden and Malmö. But so far, we are enjoying
it.
the change of scene.
Now that is a much better amount of grease. And I've got a couple of different gasket sealants going on. So I've got the original one I used, and I've got a nice high temperature one as well. So I used a whole bunch of that drive nut grease for the CV, so I'll do the same on the other, but I managed to get the CV boot to come off without damaging it, so fingers crossed for the other one. And then that won't have been too big of a mistake at all. Cool. Don't harm, no foul. Hey! Bearing extracted. Alright. Minimal damage to the shaft. Couple of nicks there. But that's not the end of the world because this part of the bearing doesn't move, so it'll sit over the top of that anyway. So what I used was, again from Biltema, a multi-tool. So it's a bit like a Dremel, but a cheaper version. But it helped me a lot. Basically what I did was I took pressure off the bearing, then hit it with the cold chisel, because I love the cold chisel, and that cracked part of it. And then I started working my way at it until I could lift it up just enough to get that gear puller, as you saw, and pull the rest of it off. So what you saw here are the bearings from what's called the race. So I guess the bearing's made up of three parts. You've got like the sleeve, which was on the other part of the unit. You've got the race filled with the balls, or those cylindrical cones, and then you have the rest of the bearing here, which is actually pressed on, so it's a really tight fit. Now I'll probably try and heat that bearing up, maybe in some hot water in a Ziploc bag or with a blowtorch, and I might not even need to press it on, it might just go on and then expand back to its normal shape. So I'm going to clean that up. I'll actually use this multi-tool just to take a bit of that if there's any kind of sharp edges to it, I'll just polish that off.
Today you've got some company in the workshop. I've got a very important task. I've got to set up Oakley's playpen because we are leaving the Airbnb tomorrow and going into the motorhome, and I just want him to have a little play area. So it's ready for him, so I'm gonna give it a crack. I think that's gonna be probably the hardest job the last 2 weeks. I'm gonna need some specialist tool for it.
I would say so.
Maybe I can have the help from my assistant if I'm struggling. No help. All right, I'll try to get it done by myself.
Tasks to attend to.
Something you will never see Chris doing is actually looking at the instruction and reading them. But I don't have the skill and the talent of Chris, so I have to have a look. I got scared for a second that it wasn't in English, but the instruction are pretty basic. So hopefully I can work it out. I'm very pleased with the result. Oakley seems pretty happy. So that's gonna be really practical when I'll need to help Chris with something, or if I need to take photos. At least we can keep an eye on Oakley. It will be next to the diesel heater as well.
Seems pretty happy.
And Chris can have as well a little play when he gets over the...
Yeah, that's it. At the end of the day I can jump in and just let some steam off. Okay, we're back in the baby-free zen zone. So I have just completed my first seal in the actual assembly of the hub. This is the next seal to go in. So pretty straightforward. I bought a larger hammer. So this is basically like I guess a plastic or a rubber hammer filled with ball bearings. So when you hit things, it absorbs all the impact, but still creates quite a large blow. Yeah, dead blow hammer, I guess. So that's helped a lot for basically pulling the shaft out. So it was stuck in here, of course. Whacked it with the hammer a bunch of times, really hard. Actually, it took a lot of force and it came straight out. Then I've pried the old seal out, and now I just need to squeeze the new one in. So that so far has been very easy. I've actually just able to push them in by hand, which is odd, but apparently that's the way it goes. So I'll do this one, and then I'll have 2 more to do, and then at least that part of the seal is done as well. Okay, quick little update. I had a special delivery of the Timken bearing that I was waiting on. So that's this guy here. So I can put that in the last of the hubs, then all 6 seals are done. So that saga is officially over, which is nice. Still waiting on the 6 O-rings though, so I can't actually put the hub together quite yet, but very soon. This is a rubber, what's called an X-ring, and that goes down in here. So when I did that seal before on each shaft, unfortunately one of them had a stuffed one, so I need to wait to put one of those shafts back in. So I'll order that from Tatanka. That shouldn't take too long to get here, and I've ordered a few other things from them as well. So hopefully that'll arrive nice and fast. Everything is getting painted, including the little half shaft. So this is what you see in the wheel. So I'm making those black. They're not going to be perfect, but they don't need to be for now. Got those 3 to paint. They've all been cleaned up. And I officially have received my first torque wrench. Now, for full transparency, I just took this exact clip before and smacked myself in the head with this torque wrench because I was wearing gloves and they had oil on them, and I slipped and literally punched myself in the head with this. So anyway, got my first torque wrench, and its first use was doing up the bolt that was under this cap here on this one and that one. So that needed to go up to between 150 and 200 Newton meters. I could only get it to 150 because it was on the ground. I didn't have the leverage to get 200 Newton meters out of it, but 150 should do absolutely fine. And then that nipple there is where you pump grease into that hub so that it can rotate. So everything is steaming along very well. I'm probably going to have a crack at making up some brake lines soon. So that'll be quite interesting. And hopefully by then the O-rings will have arrived and I can finish this saga once and for all. And it was like Christmas today. Without giving too much away, there is one thing that's arrived. You might be able to see that brand there. And those. I won't say too much more. They won't go on yet until the truck is registered. So exciting times.
happy the time has come for us to leave the Airbnb. It was a good play space for Oakley, especially outside. Really nice garden. It's time to go and live at the workshop.
Alright, so we're going to forklift this bad boy.
Yeah.
The one where the passenger's been shot.
Yeah.
You've done this before?
A couple of times.
Pretty cool. It's a flying TGB.
Alright, so Bjorn very kindly moved one of the TGB. We've got a nice little snug spot here. And Chris is gonna move our motorhome there. Because tonight we're moving in here. We're leaving the Airbnb. Here she is.
What a weapon. Runs well, runs really well. Good morning. Alright, last night was our first night in the motorhome and it actually didn't go so badly. There are some guys upstairs doing some work on the walls and the ceiling, so there's a bit of noise going on and stuff, but I'll try and film this anyway. Pretty stoked because today is the day I get to put the hubs back together, grease them up, put them together and button up the big gear. So I've just done 3, so I'll show you the 4th one now that I've got a good kind of technique going on. So pretty easy stuff really. So first up I'm just going to grease this bearing here, so that's an easier one. So I usually run a bunch of grease around the top of the needle rollers, or the top of the rollers rather. And then all around the base as well, because this is where the rubber flange sort of sits and spins. So it needs to be nice and clean and greased up. And then I also grease the shaft as well. So in Sweden, grease is called fat. So it took me a little bit to work out what was going on. So this is from the fat aisle in Biltema. Okay, I'm going to bring the big gear, the big hub over. Okay, so there's the hub there, and then I'm going to grease the new seals. And now I've got to pump a ton of grease into the valley between the seals here that the shaft sits through. So the specs say to fill it up half with grease. So I've been pumping almost a full one of these 100-gram tubes in. Almost. So I'm just leaving like a little bit left over, and that helps me grease everything else. So I'll pump a new one in there in a sec. Messy job using it. It's like trying to squeeze the last of the toothpaste out. Okay, so that's what that looks like there. So pretty much half filled with grease. And then I can move the shaft over here, spin this guy around. He gently goes over the top like so. Now I get the big gear. So that's one of those big gears here. So that's left rear. Just going to clean some of those splines out just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to grease that bearing as well. Okay, that bearing's greased up. And it goes over the top. Gently fits down over the teeth. Now I get the big nut. And this has an O-ring which is crushed, so I've got new O-rings, so that gets gone. And I got a new O-ring here. That goes over the shaft. Then I've got the large washer. And on the large washer, I'm going to put gasket sealant, the high quality, high temp one. And I'm not fooling around with that, I'm chucking tons on. That goes over the top. Then we've got the nut. And then this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So you'll see on here that that gear hasn't sat all the way down. So I need to basically remove that play with the rattle gun, and then we start measuring. Okay, so with the rattle gun, I've just taken the play out of the hub. So it's nice and easy to spin, but there's a tiny bit of resistance here. So the gear is seated properly. The nut is pretty close to where it needs to be. Now, with this digital luggage scale, which we bought from Biltema as well, of course, I need to measure the force that is required to overcome the resistance of the gear and turn the hub. So I'm going to hook that to the edge and then start to pull. And that tells me 3.5 kilos of resistance. Now I know from the specifications in the manual that if I'm using old bearings, which I am on this hub, I then need to add between 2.4 from memory and 2.8 kilos of force to that. So we had 3.5 kilos, got 6.3 kilos now of force that I need to create in order to overcome the resistance of that hub. So now I'm going to start cranking down on this very slowly, and incrementally I'm just going to be measuring until I get that rough 6.3 kilo mark. Now that was originally in Newton meters, but I did some calculations to change it into kilos because it's much easier for my brain to be able to deal with. Okay, so a couple of taps with the rattle gun, and now I measure. Should I put that on this one, the little hook? And we got about 4.5 kilos, so I'll crank up again. This is where this rattle gun is coming in so handy, because trying to crank on this and wedge this at the same time would be nearly impossible. I tried at one point and it was just ridiculous. And we're about 6.5. To round that out, that is now in the correct place. So this still turns, but there's enough resistance on it to specifications. Then what I need to do is grab a punch and a screwdriver and peen that spot in near that divot there. So you see it's almost where it was last time, but not quite. So I need to punch that in right there, and that sort of locks the nut into place, and that way it's not going to come free under load. So I'll do that now and then get on with the other two. And there is the line up. That was actually quite a lot of work. That was like a little assembly line going on. So that's all done finally. And then I just got another special delivery. This is from a company called Tatanka, or Tatanka Parts. And they are in Sweden, which is awesome. And they supply parts OEM and aftermarket for the C303 and the C304, and they ship all over the world. So a few people have asked on YouTube, must be really hard getting parts for these things. Not at all. Thanks to them at Tatanka, I know that if we drive over to America, ship this thing over there, I'll be able to get parts so quickly. But Ange literally ordered that last night after hours, and then this arrived today, which is unbelievable, and it's like 10:30 a.m. So got the ball joints, which I needed. These are for the brake lines for me to be able to make up. And critically, there is the X-ring. So I can put this last one together. And that actually means, I'm even a bit nervous about this, that we can put the whole thing back together. Then I just need to do brake lines. Check this out. Hopefully you can see. Ooh, looks like a brand new axle. So last night I cleaned it all up, spent maybe 2-3 hours cleaning it, and then spent about 30 minutes painting it. So still drying a little bit because I did some touch-ups this morning. But yeah, that's looking nice. So I'll actually do that to the other two before I put these portals back together. And at least I know that that is the axles painted, because as soon as I put these hubs back on, it's going to be a lot trickier for me to get in there and clean it all up and paint it. So I'm kind of doing things in a weird little roundabout way, but that's my method. The team. Hey buddy. And he has socks on for once. We shall see how long that lasts. Got a heater. I have just painted one of the diffs.
Oh, what a day. It's been a bit more challenging in the motorhome than the Airbnb, but we're getting there, getting a bit used to our space. Last night, surprisingly, it was not too bad. We had a heater, we were nice and warm. I was expecting a much worse night of sleep, so yeah, no, I'm happy in that respect. And we're making some progress, so tomorrow should be even better.
Yeah, he likes the light. So yeah, painted the diff, and I've put the ball joints in the track rod. Yeah, that's looking better. So much work, such filthy work. This was clean before, now look at that. That's all just off the diff. So yeah, lots of elbow grease, but that's okay. It's coming along. So then there is a PTO. So there's a power takeoff unit here in this middle diff. Hopefully you can see that. Sort of. Now that powers the rear axle. That is definitely leaking, so I need to be able to pull that off and have a look at whatever is causing it. It's either a gasket's gone or an actual seal. So to pull that off, you've got to pull the drive shaft off. I just had a crack at trying to get some of the bolts off the drive shaft, and they are like fused on. So what I think I'll do is potentially after hours, I'll go into the main workshop and I'll grab that induction heater. And I'll try and heat the bolts up and see if that'll enable me to get them off. There's not enough room for me to use the rattle gun, so I'm only able to use little wrenches because they're like a size 14 and 15. So yeah, I just can't get the leverage on those to pull them off. So I'll have a crack at that. And I basically just need to make some brake lines as well in the evenings so that I'm not in the workshop too much. So yeah, lots and lots and lots to do, but we are getting there. That was brutal. That was really brutal. But it's on. Well, I'm glad that's over. That was the first one in. So I will have a coffee and then I'll button all of those nuts back up. so hard. It's so hard to line this thing up. What? Yes, that was too easy. Not gonna lie, that was about my 4th or 5th attempt actually. I don't know actually how heavy this is, but it's more just how awkward it is while getting that shaft perfectly dead center at the same time. And then you're kind of holding these sharp bolts and that's sticking in everywhere. Anyway, that was the long side of the diff, so that was one of the trickier ones. I've just got 2 more like that. And the others are the shorter ones, they're a bit easier. All right, so I'm gonna button this up to 100 to 120 Newton meters, all of these bolts, and then at least the carrier itself is back on. Felt horrible having to put these disgusting old shocks on. They are not going to be long-lived. They are more just a placeholder so that we can get it over inspection and do all of that. And then I need to be able to clean all under here. And then our brand spanking new shocks can go on, which I'll show you at some point soon. Cannot wait for that. They are like at least double the thickness of those with so much more fluid capacity as well. So they are going to be awesome. And I think at this rate, I'm going to replace these springs. These are the 8 leaf. Some of them got a 7 leaf. 8 leaf is definitely better. But because we're putting in that, you know, new engine and the bigger tires, anyway, I just want to refresh these springs because they are 50 years old. So I'm going to buy new springs from Tatanka, I think. And then the rear ones are a 3 leaf. Now some of them got 2, which was far too low. But I would like to put a TGB 20 4 leaf in if I can find them. So that's why I'm kind of leaving these without being painted and cleaned up. And then I can put some graphite in between the leaves. But yeah, I'll see if I can find some 4 leaves for the rear because it's going to be a camper. We want to be able to carry that extra weight long term. So I don't want it to gradually sag over time, even if these 3 leaves were fine for now. Anyway, all right, I'll button that up and stop rambling. Another pretty long day in the workshop. Angie's just made me dinner. She's now going to be putting Oakley to sleep. So this will be the first night where hopefully I can do some work in here and in the main workshop and get back to the motorhome without waking him up. So we'll see. I've been down at the workshop making brake lines, which has been, I gotta say, probably my least favorite part of this build so far. So I'll show how I'm doing them maybe tomorrow night if I do the rest, because I've still got about 6 lines or so to make for now. But we're getting there. It's just the kit that I've got from Build Tema kind of minces it a little bit, but it's all I can really do unless I spend a ton of money on a kit just for this one-off job. So yeah, trying to make do with what I can. But anyway, I got the actual fittings themselves from Tatanka, so I was really stoked when they arrived so fast. And then the brake hose, the copper brake hoses come from Build Tema. It's not too bad of a price. I think it's like, works out to be like maybe 40 euro for 10 meters. I'm sure you can get it cheaper elsewhere, but at least it's just down the road to us, so I can get as much as we need. But yeah, not a really fun job at all. Some people have said that copper's too soft, but I mean, Sweden's been using this on all of these TGBs for 50 years and they don't seem to be failing. I'm only replacing them because they look a bit nasty. So at least these are shiny and new. And then wherever there's a lot of movement in the truck, I've got new rubber ones, which I'll show you as well. So anyway, long night in the workshop. I'll probably try and maybe do 3 more tonight. Anyway, it is what it is. Burrito time. I'm going to chill out for a sec and then crack back at it. Oh, today is not my day, guys. So all of these hubs that I all put back together have to all come apart. All 6 of them. Because what I haven't realized until now, it matters where you place this unit. So see, there are 3 screws here, bolts. They have to line up in this part of the hub here. But if your brake cylinder is here, it's not in the right place. So I now need to pull all of them apart, reorient them depending on where the brake lines are going to be on the truck. And there's no like hard and fast rule, but what I do know is I unfortunately haven't lucked on any of them from what I can tell. Not one of them. So luckily I've got 6 spare O-rings, those rubber O-rings, because I accidentally ordered double, so that's worked out to be really well. But then I have to pull these all apart again, and so I'm going to need the big puller, maybe the press again, back with the big socket. Not fun, it's at least half a day's work, so yeah. Anyway, on the brighter news, we've got some shiny new brake lines. Look, they're not the best job. I'm not going to win any like hot rodding awards here for design, but they're working. And then the rear diff is now painted as well, so that's looking really good. I've pulled off a reaction rod arm, and unfortunately also I can't get the bushings out. I wanted to replace all of these bushings, but they have a steel sleeve, and so far I've put at least, well, I've put 5 ton in with the press and they're not even budging at all. If it was just the rubber that was being replaced, that would be okay. But the bushings I have as a replacement, these ones here, have the metal sleeve, as you can see. So what might happen is I just have to paint them all up and put them back in to where they normally go with the old bushings, which I hate. My OCD hates that. But the bushings aren't all that bad. I would really like to replace them, but they're not that bad, so worst case I've got to put them back in again. But I've posted up on the forum, on the TGB forum, if anyone else has successfully done it themselves, so maybe I'll get a tip there, but it's not looking good. The only way I can really see if I could do it would be with heat, and if I use heat I know it's going to destroy the bushing, and then if I can't get it out, and then you know what, it might end up being more hassle than it's worth. So anyway, I now need to stop everything and go back to all these hubs. Okay. Oh well. Okay, the hub is on. Sorry about this close-up of my face, but put my flashlight on. Hub is on, and now I need to set up the brake lines that I've made. So they've got to go into the wheel cylinder. This front one, of course, has 2 wheel cylinders, so it's a bit more work. But that looks like that will work. Okay. Okay, so that's in position now. So now I pull the little threaded, and I just call them brake line nipples. They're probably not called that, but anyway, that's what they're called now. Then I'm putting a little bit of copper paste on, and that's to stop them seizing. So they'll still tighten up really nice, but at least they won't properly seize in those cylinders again. And unfortunately, I'm anticipating leaks, so it'll make it easier for me to take them apart and check and stuff like that. And the threaded part is not where it would be leaking from, it would be leaking from the brass end. So that goes in, and then I tighten that up with my slippery hands coated in copper paste. And then I'll tighten that up with the brake line caliper, and I'll do the same on the other side. Tighten everything up, and then at least both fronts will be done. Rough Friday, but you win some, you lose some. Just means I'll have a late night tonight maybe doing those, or yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's good if I stagger things and not do them all at once. Those longer ones are so much harder than the shorter ones. Okay, it's Saturday morning and we are getting somewhere. So this is a PTO, a power takeoff, sort of gearbox, I guess you could call it, is the easiest way to explain it. So this sits on the top of the middle diff, like so. And this is where the rear drive shaft comes off. So middle diff technically powers via this gearing the final diff, the rear diff in the 6x6. So whenever the middle diff is moving, so is the rear diff. So therefore it's not what's called, I think technically what's called a boggy axle or a lazy, no sorry, what's called a lazy axle is when the rear diff in a 6x6 doesn't actually really do anything. This, it is always turning whenever the middle gearbox is, which is always, of course. This has been leaking at least around this flange, which connects to the top of the middle diff, because of all the wet oil that I can see and the grizzly grot. So there will be a seal within here, but luckily, well, I'm hoping luckily, this top thing isn't a seal, it's just a gasket, so I can put more gasket seal around there and button it back up. Hopefully it'll stop the leak. But I want to delve deeper. So I want to see what is going on in here. So I'm going to pull this cover off the back, show you guys that, and I might even pull the entire unit off. If it looks like the seal is really easy to get to, maybe I'll replace it just to be done with it. But the actual, like the movement itself, I can't see any issues with bearings or anything like that. Sounds good, seems to move nice. The rear drive shaft, which I'll show you once, I've only pulled out one end in order to pull this out. Once I pull the whole drive shaft out, I'm going to check out the uni joints, those rear uni joints. From what I could tell just then, one's a little bit clunky and sticky, so I will probably learn how to replace uni joints as well. So, and there's quite a few on there. There's 6 uni joints to be replaced on the 3 drive shafts. So, yeah, maybe I'll need to learn this anyway. So, all right, let's start pulling this thing apart. Okay, so I've pulled the PTO apart. It's pretty neat really. So it's basically a little mini drive shaft, or it is a drive shaft. So that turns the bigger drive shaft going to the rear diff. There's no seal in here, which is good news for me. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you would have realized there's not going to be a seal there, but I didn't. So that's a good thing. So all I need to do is re-put gasket, button it back up to this end, where you can see the bearings in here. And on the other side, basically the same, mirrored. So it's a really cool little unit. Now, more gasket seal around there, and then I can button the whole thing back together. I guess the only place there would be a seal would be behind this flange here, which, as far as I can tell, is not leaking. There's some crud and stuff, but it's so dry, it doesn't look like it's leaking at all. And the oil looks really nice and clean and black. So I'm going to button that all back together. That's really good news. Then I can clean it up really well, and then I can paint it, and then I can reattach it to that diff, and it also lets me get into the diff where all the grotty oil was and clean that up as well, and then paint it. So that's about as clean as I'm going to get the PTO now. Both the seals have been done, so both gaskets have been remade with the liquid gasket stuff. So now I am ready to paint it. Once that is painted and drying in the Brantho, the black, I will start having a crack at getting all the grease off that middle diff, which will be a bit of a challenge because I can't use any water in here. So yeah, that'll be fun. Welcome to Sweden. It was a beautiful day this morning. Now there's ice coming from the sky. I guess one good thing about doing lots of hard work is I never really get cold anymore. I'm like always got a sweat up. This is looking pretty schmick. Final coffee of the day, coffee number 3. And then I'll finish off on this diff, and I don't know how late I'll work tonight. Maybe I'll do some brake lines, not too sure yet. This reaction rod, so it sounds like what I'm going to have to do is cut this out with something, just the rubber, and then use a hacksaw to take out the metal sleeve. Whether I want to do that for 16 of them, I'm really not too sure. I'll see maybe how one goes and take it from there. Well, Ange, here's a souvenir for you. And this.
That looks in good condition.
It can be your new necklace.
After my beautiful ring.
I'm sort of regretting my decision to pull this apart, but you know how I am. Yeah, it's not easy. Yo-hee! Finally, bit of hacksawing, bit of punch, and now a bit of, yes, okay, whoops, I was not prepared, hold fire. Yes, there's the sleeve. All right. Bam. That was in there solid. Maybe they've used something. It's either paint or it's actually they've used a sealant maybe. Nah, it must be paint. Must be paint from the inside of this. Man, that was in there. So the hacksaw trick worked really, really well, because as you might be able to see, the two cuts I made, so I made one cut here and one cut on the other side, they've closed completely. So what it did is it gave it a little bit of breathing room for the press to then be able to squeeze it together as it pushed it out. So yeah, that was really good. It only took me 4 hours. No, it didn't take me that long, but yeah, it took me far too long for doing 16 of them, and I lost 2 drill bits. So I'm running out of drill bits fast. And the other issue is the replacement that I've got. This isn't actually for a TGB, it's actually for a Ford Transit. But they are very close size, but they're not an exact size. So, don't know if you can tell, actually this would be easier if I can do that. I'm not really good at this, am I? This filming business on my own. Anyway, this is shorter. The original is shorter, which means I have to grind this one down a little bit. Not at the end of the world. It's not a really important piece. Like, it doesn't actually matter what the size is, so I can either use a grinder, like, a handheld grinder like my Ryobi there, or I can use a bench grinder. Bench grinder might be the easiest way, and then it will fit perfectly. Okay, let's try and do that now. I forgot to mention actually, so that weird situation with the sharp marks in the bottom of the hub and at the top, all of them had it. So it was some sort of feature. They must have done that afterwards, after they had actually been properly cast, because yeah, they haven't been repainted or anything. So it's definitely an afterthought sort of thing. But I saw someone actually messaged on YouTube, I think it was, and said that his one had the exact same things as well. So case solved, nothing wrong with our portals. Okay, the PTO is back on. I would be done for if it wasn't for bringing my Olight head torch over from Oz. I love them. I'm gonna maybe try and grab a couple more. Yeah, they've been so versatile. They're so grubby now, but yeah, they're really, really good. Okay, so button the PTO back up. I'm gonna do some brake lines today, probably this afternoon / this evening. Oh, I need to put one of the reaction rods back in because I've done both the bushings on that. So that one can go back in, and then another one can come out to do early this coming week because it's Sunday today. So it's the end of the day on Sunday now. So I cleaned and painted all 3 differentials. So it doesn't sound like much, but that took so long because they were so disgusting. Now I'm working on brake lines. So I've done these parts of the rear.
Looking so
With the new
nice.
copper brake lines. We've got the soft lines going up into the chassis rails as well, so they're new. The PTO in the back is all done and resealed. And then I've got the front one there, new soft lines, new copper lines as well. And then I've been also working today on the steering links, the control arms. So yeah, lots going on. Yeah.
We're getting the full tour with Oakley. He's trying to touch everything. It makes it a little bit more challenging, isn't it?
So this was a pretty challenging week this week. One of my worst days so far. Day before yesterday, just nothing was going right for me. And then yesterday and today has been much better. The weekend's nice because there's like no interruptions. It's just us. It's super quiet. And I don't feel like I'm rushing to do stuff. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's just the weekend. Tomorrow, maybe we'll take a little bit of time off. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the past few weeks have been a bit challenging overall, like doing all these chores, finding a house, like the motorhome, finding a car. These took so much of our time, so couldn't focus 100% on the build. So at least now it's out of the way. We've settled in a motorhome, which for me has been a bit challenging looking after Oakley there, but I'm finding my marks and we're getting there.
You know, I'm starting to gather momentum, I think, which is nice. So, yeah.
So stay tuned next week. Not too sure what is in the cards, so you'll have to watch to find out.
I'm not sure either. Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.